Welcome in, my friends. How's everyone doing on this beautiful Monday? Lot we can get into tonight. Just me flying solo today, so a lot we can dive into after what we've witnessed the first two games of the season. Probably not what many people expected. Probably very few. Um, it's even the most pessimistic of people probably didn't expect what we saw Saturday. It's there's been a lot of bad. Before we get started, gonna thank our sponsors over A Glass, 2 locations in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter, to take care of all your auto glass needs. They do replacement, repair. You can get yourself a free quote online at myaglass.com. Yeah, there was, well, at least offensively, there was just not a lot of good in the LSU game. There was not a lot of good in the opening half Saturday. I mean, they finally got it going in the second half. But I am of the opinion that this, Troy team's not the Troy team that came into Clemson in 2016 and played. They're not that caliber. Um, I might end up being proven wrong on that, but I don't think they are. Um, I'm sure there was a little bit of a hangover. I mean, we saw it with LSU too, but that doesn't explain all the deficiencies we've seen out of this offense, particularly in that first half against Troy. You can kind of understand it a little bit against LSU. Man, that's a really good defense they've got over there. But this offense, it is playing nowhere near to what most of us think its capability is. You have a senior quarterback who, for 6 quarters, resembled more of what we saw of the guy as a sophomore than the guy that we saw over the second half of last season. We have seen an offensive line who has really struggled to pass protect. You know, we've seen an offensive coordinator totally abandon the running game down by 7, basically for the entire second half. We've seen 2 receivers who one was a 5-star coming out of high school, one was a 5-star for most of that recruiting cycle before getting dinged late. So 2 guys that were rated 5 stars at one time or another deal with some drops, one more so than the other. We've seen the tight ends not really be involved very much at all. It's been very discombobulated, and even when some things were working in the second half Saturday night, it still kind of felt, I don't know, it just kind of felt a little off. Even though they were moving the ball and scoring some points, I don't know, that could have been just me. I put it out there now. I never went and even rewatched the game. I got no interest in rewatching what I watched during the first half Saturday. It was just that bad. Overall, I think the defense has been about what I expected. There's still some things to get cleaned up, particularly on the edges against the run. But all in all, they've given up 3 touchdowns, and one of them, really does kind of lie at the coach's feet. Even Dabo said that himself Saturday night. When you get that guy matched up on Jamal Anderson out there, you got to recognize that, call timeout. That is a mismatch if there ever was one. But they didn't, and he got his doors blown off for the long touchdown. But all in all, I've said it a few times before the season started. I thought the defense would probably be a process. They're not gonna. It's not gonna be as good as it's gonna be game 1, game 2. I think they'll get better as it goes along. But for the most part, I think it's been pretty good. Didn't understand some of the rotations they were doing Saturday a couple of times on 3rd and long. You got basically the 4th, 5th defensive tackle in there, and they give it up both times. One of them on a long run, if I'm remembering right, but they give it up both times. So I didn't understand that. When any combination of Woods, Capehart, or Green have been out there, I think they've been really disruptive. But when you kind of start rotating some of the guys lower on the depth chart in, it's not quite what it is with those guys at the top of the depth chart in. Will Helt's been really good. TJ Parker's kind of just been, some things the linebackers can still get cleaned up, but they haven't been terrible or anything, not the starters anyways. So I've been pretty pleased with what I've seen on the defensive side of the ball, man. But there's a lot of issues on the offensive side of the ball. And for anybody who still questions it's Dabo Swinney that's handcuffing Garrett Riley, and this is all on him, there is zero chance. I mean, zero chance that Dabo Swinney would have passed the ball 19 consecutive times to end that game against LSU trailing by 7. Zero. He is a run-first guy, always has been, always will be. So anybody who wanted proof, there it is. But the brutal truth, you're 3 years into this system, or you're into your 3rd year now. Senior quarterback. He's into his 3rd year in the system. Better was expected. More was expected. And if they don't get some of this stuff cleaned up, they're gonna come home from Atlanta with an L. It's just there's no other way to say it, and their season will probably be done at that point, because this is a team that was, you had people that were predicting them to win a national title or play for a national title, but I think pretty much everybody would agree that they expected this to be a playoff team. And if you start 0-1 in ACC play, and based on what I've seen in the first 2 games, I don't know that this team's made of. Well, they're not. I don't know that they are made of what you need to be made of to kind of overcome that, because they would have to run the table after that and hope Georgia Tech would lose twice. Probably get some help. Probably need some help. And I don't know that this team's got that kind of leadership on it. Especially on the offensive side of the ball, I really don't know who the leader is. I mean, you would assume Cade would be one of those guys, but kind of the way he played for the first 6 quarters, I don't know. He just there's probably some people who think that maybe some of those guys have been reading too much of their own press clippings. I don't know. Can't answer that. I tell you that I think at least a little bit of it has been that maybe not that it's gone to Cade Klubnik's head, but that he's trying to live up to those expectations and maybe pressing a little bit too much and maybe trying to do too much and thinking too much or whatever. Scared to make a mistake. But there's been a lot of bad, and I have seen a lot of frustration over the past, 10 days or so, or whatever it's been since the LSU game ended last Saturday. Didn't get to dive in, always appreciate Brandon coming on here and giving us his perspective. But when he's on, we don't get to dive into it quite as deep, but we can go anywhere you want to go. Fire away. I will answer everything best I can. Obviously, I'm not going to get everything, but I will get to as many as I can. If you're watching on Facebook, remember you need to be, if you want your comments to be seen over here, you got to be watching on the TCI Facebook page if you're watching it in one of the groups, where like the Junkies group or the We Love Clemson group, and you comment under that post. I'm not going to see it. You have to actually click on the TCI Facebook page and comment there. I mean to remind everybody of that every week, and I forget. But yeah, we can go take it wherever you want to go. First up, man, what's up, y'all? Cade has reached his full potential, and it's okay. We appreciate what you did for us. I don't think Cade's playing to his full potential because I've seen him play better than what he's played over the first 8 quarters of this season. So now, did he hit his ceiling last year? I can't answer that. But over the down the stretch last season, I thought, for a lot of it, he played as good as any quarterback in the country. But he is definitely not started out that way this year. I was looking at some numbers last night. Let me see if I can get them pulled up here right quick. Some numbers for where this offense kind of ranks after 2 games, and it's bad. And it's not all him, but a lot of it is. A lot of it's definitely him, particularly in the LSU game. Let's see here. They rank 109 in scoring offense. They rank 118 in total offense. They rank 125th in average time of possession. The rushing offense ranks number 127 overall. They rank 92nd in passing efficiency and 76th in passing yards per game. I mean, those are that is putrid, man. And they are number 118 in total first downs. That kind of tells the tale right there. It has not been good. It was kind of disheartening to see Cade kind of regress back to sophomore Cade during that LSU game, because that's definitely what he looked like to me. 1 second, let me send a text here. But as far as his potential, I don't think he's playing up to his potential right now because I've seen him be so much better. I just think he looks like a guy that's kind of in his own head, and he's going to have to get out of it quickly. Run the dang ball. Yeah, that was another thing that was kind of, frustrating to watch against LSU, particularly. You're down 7, and I get it. The offensive line was not playing well in that game. They didn't play well for a lot of the Troy game. Dabo talked about how they kind of adjusted the blocking scheme at halftime. I'd love to know, where that originated. Kind of went away from the zone blocking and went more towards, the gap stuff, the gap schemes, and it made a big difference. And some people might think because they didn't have Tristan Lee and Walker Parks that played a big part. But, man, Tristan Lee kind of got worked over against LSU. He did not have a good game. And those other 2 guys, Sadler and Sewell, they played a lot of football, man. This offensive line should be better than what it's been. I can't count how many fire Matt Luke comments I've seen in the past 10 days. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. At a certain point, a coach can only do so much. This group was playing much better last year than it has or at least over the first 6 quarters of this season. It's been tough to watch, but yeah, when your quarterback's struggling, one of the best ways to take some of the pressure off of him is to run the ball. not attempting one single rush over the second half of that LSU game outside of that one early when Randall got in the third quarter. After you raved about those running backs all throughout the spring, all throughout fall camp, that's almost criminal. It's I will never be able to wrap my head around that. I mean, even if you're only getting 1-2 yards a carry, you still got to do it a little bit to try to keep them honest. Haven't given up on this team, but I think the Riley extension ain't happening. They usually do 2 years at a time, so he signed through. He got a 1-year extension on top of what he was originally signed to. So I think he signed through the end of next season. But yeah, I doubt they're talking much about that right now. Will Riley wait a full half again to press the run, or was that Dabo getting involved that created that second half? They did something they changed something at halftime. I mean, Dabo readily admitted that after the game. He even talked about it again last night on his weekly teleconference. They changed the way they were blocking up front. If Dabo's going to get involved, that's how I see it. That's how I see him getting involved. Saying, "Hey, we have got to run the ball more." Not sitting over here dialing up specific plays one after the other, or calling specific plays one after the other, after the other, after the other. But more so of maybe saying, "Hey, we have got to run the ball." That's how I see Dabo getting involved. So I could absolutely have seen that. I'm surprised it didn't happen against LSU. To me, that's kind of proof of how he's kind of been hands off with Garrett Riley since he's been here. But yeah, I could 100% see a scenario at halftime there saying, hey, with Dabo saying, "Hey, look, we're gonna change the way we're blocking up front, and you're gonna run the ball, run it, run it, run it." I could absolutely see that happening. I mean, he's the head coach. The buck stops with him. Everybody that complains about him being involved in the offense, man, he's responsible for it. No matter who he hires, he's at the end of the day, he's still responsible for the offense, the defense. He's the one that he has to answer to the people above him, just like the people below him have to answer to him. Not even situational play calling anymore. Will we even see competent play calling on Saturday? Yeah, the LSU game. It's hard to dive into play calling, outside of the abandoning the run stuff, but like specific play calls because you don't really know exactly what it was or where it's supposed to go or which guy's supposed to. And with Cade not going through his reads and just refusing to go to a hot route in that game, if he just goes to a hot route 2 or 3 times, man, there's a guy with green grass for miles, and the whole narrative shifts. But when you abandon the run game like that again, it's almost criminal. I will say this, LSU in that first game, man, they screened Clemson to death. I know Clemson fans hate the screen passes and stuff, man, but I think it was either 15 or 18 of Nussmeier's passes were completed behind the line of scrimmage. They just screened them to death. There was very little down the field. Sometimes that's what it takes. And, I wouldn't have mind seeing, some of the short, quick passing game in that game instead of everything, trying to be forced 10, 15 yards down the field for the most part. But again, if Cade can go through his reads and he hits his hot man or he hits the hot route, man, there's at least 3 occasions to where the guy that is the hot route has plenty of room. 2 of them probably go for touchdowns. So I mean, a lot of that's on him. Do I do film study or just live watch? I personally see 2 offensive linemen popping up over and over with missed assignments or just blocking the air. Cade looked like Cade in the second half, but what a fly. Yeah, I mean, I did not go back and watch. I saw some clips online, but I did not go back and watch the Troy game. I usually go back and rewatch it, but I saw a lot of that against LSU. The offensive line was not good in that game. They have taken a major step back from where they were in their first year under Luke, and it's pretty much the same guys outside of Marcus Tate. No one will ever convince me that Marcus Tate was that important to the offensive line. That's not saying he's a bad player or anything. I just don't think his loss had that much impact. I just don't have an explanation for it. Tristan Lee is a guy that has struggled at times against some of the better defensive lines they played, but it's an area that was supposed to be a strength, and yeah, I've seen that the offensive linemen, particularly on that left side over there, have had some struggles, man. It's been hard to watch. Stop scheduling Troy. It's the first time they played back in 2011. I'm sure everybody remembers it was Chad Morris's first game as offensive coordinator. The offense stunk it up in the first half. Troy was leading at halftime, and the Boo Birds rained down. Troy played them tough again in 2016. Clemson got up by 2 scores, but couldn't never really put them away, and it ended up being 30-23 or 30-24 or whatever it was. And I've seen so many comments about how, well, last time Troy played Clemson tough, they went on to win the national title. Well, to me, they're 2 very different circumstances. That 2016 team, they were fresh off of that appearance in the national championship against Alabama. That they just, they lost, such a heartbreaker, and everybody had already had both those teams penciled in to play one another again and have a rematch in the national title game that year. And Clemson was kind of going through the most. Clemson should have lost the next week too against North Carolina State. That's when they missed that field goal at the end, and the game Gallman got knocked out of. But I always thought that 2016 team was kind of going through the motions there for a long part of that season, and they kind of needed to be beat. And then Pitt finally beat them in November there in Death Valley, and that's when they flipped the switch. And put it on everybody on their way to the national title game. See, I don't know that this team can flip the switch like that. I don't know that this team, needed to be beat to see that they're mortal. They got beat plenty last year. And I don't know that there's the kind of leadership you need on the offensive side of the ball. I think there's some on the defensive side, man, but I don't know that those receivers are young. Antonio's not a big in-your-face guy. Neither is Cade. He kind of likes to keep to himself a lot of the time. I mean, he can get fired up sometimes, but that's not an all-the-time thing. And Adam Randall's one of those kind of quiet, reserved guys. I just don't know who it is. There's a lot of laid-back personalities on that side of the ball, and I think that's a part of this. Yeah, Troy has definitely given Clemson some fits. Would love to hear your opinion at the first drive of the second half. Something like 7 of 9 plays were runs. Dabo had to be involved in that decision. Oh, I can absolutely see Dabo saying, "Hey, man, we're gonna run the ball." That I can 100% see that, and it was probably him or Matt Luke who kind of spearheaded it, and I'm just guessing here, but or making an educated guess here that it was one of those two that kind of spearheaded the idea of switching up how they were blocking up front at halftime. But yeah, if Dabo's going to get involved, that's how I see him getting involved. Hey, we're gonna run the ball on this drive. Don't stop until they stop us. That's how I see him getting involved. Absolutely, I could see that playing out that way. Could that be due to them swapping them around? You talking about offensive line and cross training? I don't think so, man, because they've always done the cross training that way. I don't know what it is. I certainly didn't see that many MAs last year, not that I remember, anyways. So I can't answer that. You know, but that Sadler did have to move in and from move outside from guard to play tackle this week. But I mean, he's practiced at both. He's played both. I just don't think that's what it is. And they do the cross training every year. Time to bring Tom out of the box and put him on the field. I'm all for letting Tom Allen be where he wants to be. And he chose to be in the box. That's where he wants to be. That's all right by me. I haven't had many gripes about the defense so far. Early 2025 Cade looks like early 2024 Cade. Not quite sure. Often a second half or second off, missing some wide open wide receivers, too much Red Bull or something. He looked to me, he looks, or at least in the LSU game, he looked more like 2023 Cade, where everything was rushed. He was, and a lot of times, early in after he had taken over the job, he'd run straight back in the pocket. The other night, that night, he was, escaping out to the right. A lot of sometimes when there wasn't even pressure and he needed to step up into the pocket. But he's absolutely, he's absolutely been late on some throws. That throw to TJ Moore early in the game Saturday, where he liked to got him killed and TJ Moore dropped it. That throw's got to come out quicker than that. Probably a second at least. I mean, he was way late on that ball. And that's not the only example. There was another one where he almost got Tyler Brown killed. That was not only late, but it was off target too. He doesn't look too amped up to me like he did when earlier in his career. He doesn't look amped up coming into the facility. He doesn't look. He was absolutely not amped up like during the pregame Saturday. Matter of fact, and I tell you all the time, my memory sucks now, but I want to say that he came out onto the field for pregame much later than he usually does. And he was just kind of going through his routine over there the way he always does. But he didn't look too amped up or anything. Pink Floyd 94 in the house. Yeah, I was at that show when Pink Floyd played in Clemson. That was a fun night, the parts that I can remember anyways. Jaheim and Denoff are both better than last year. Man, I thought Cade Denoff played well against LSU. You know, again, I didn't go back and watch this one, but I didn't see watching it live from up there. I didn't really see anything glaring, man. But Jaheim's been really good. Um, he's been really good, and they kind of need that, man, because there's gonna come a time where Parker or Hell's got to come off the field, and maybe they're banged up for a few plays or something. There's gonna be a time where they're gonna need a guy like Jaheim, and so far he's stepped up. He looks much improved, particularly. You know, we already knew he can get after the passer. Um, but yeah, he looks a little stronger in the run defense for sure. Yeah, Amari Adams played not much. It was crap. I had the snap counts pulled up right here, and then I clicked out of them. Hold on one second. I got it right here. Defensive tackle. He played 3. And he got graded by PFF at 60.4. Take that for whatever it's worth. He got graded lower than Champ Thompson, which I don't know how, because I did not think that Champ played that well in the limited snaps he got. Because I think he only got 3 too, and at least 2 of them came on a 3rd and long, and Troy converted both of them. That is, hey, that's correct. Clemson absolutely won the game, man. That you can't lose sight of that fact, because when it got 16-0, I thought that was it. Y'all know Ashby. Ashby was sitting beside me in the press box, and I told her, I said, "That's it. That's a wrap. This thing's over." And because I didn't, the way they had been playing up to that point, man, I didn't know how they were going to come back. But they kind of turned it on in the second half. He's not reading his progressions, and he's locking in on his receiver. There was definitely some of that going on through the first 6 quarters. Absolutely, man. He was just looking at his first read, and not looking at anything else, and it cost him. I thought he was much better at going through his progressions and not locking in on guys against Troy the other night. He was definitely doing a better job of that. How well does the defense play when spread out? We saw 6 run plays of 8+ yards, also about 6 or 7 first down conversions by Troy after they were well behind the chains. Is there enough speed on defense? Yeah, I think there is. Again, I don't. There's still some things they've got to get cleaned up, and I thought I saw, or at least in my opinion, I think they were experimenting with some things against Troy. I saw some dime. We saw the bear front with 5 defensive linemen. There were a lot of things they were trying the other night. They were trying some different things with the rotation. I think they do that to kind of see what works, see what doesn't. So, yeah, there's definitely some things they've still got to get cleaned up. They get pinched on the edge sometimes, and they've been a little susceptible to the cutback two backs when they cut back against the grain. So there's definitely still some areas they need to be better in, and you're touching on them right here. When you have a team like Troy in 3rd and long, you want to get off the field. But again, two of those I remember. Champ Thompson come right out on the field, and he is not what Peter Woods or Capehart or Stefan Green is at this point. So yeah, I think some of that plays into that, but there's definitely some stuff they still got to kind of clean up there. I do think they got enough speed though. Absolutely. Why doesn't Dabo go back and pull some offensive plays out of the 2017 playbook? Hey, there's a ton of people out there that 100% believe they're still using the playbook from 2017. Run the ball, misdirection, tempo, sweeps, still getting their rhythm, apparently. Looking for more blitz on defense. Seems to be a learning process on both sides of the ball this year. We have high expectations still. Is a developmental and learning game. Good to see them run the ball. Hope to see the confidence build moving forward. Hang in there. Keep up the faith. Yeah, there's just not a lot of misdirection in this offense. That's it's kind of got more air raid tendencies. Um, Not a lot of motion, and going and watching some other teams, particularly in week one. Um, I saw there's a lot of other offenses that are similar that don't use a bunch of motion and stuff like that. So it's not just Clemson. As far as looking for more blitz and on the defense, you gotta, when you're playing a team like LSU, you gotta kind of with what they had at the skill spots. Um, there's a fine line you're walking when you start talking about blitzing, because when you blitz, you're leaving somebody open, and that's a lot. There's a lot of weapons on that LSU offense that could burn you when you start getting heavy on the blitz. Again, I thought they were experimenting with some things against Troy, but um, as far as it being a developmental and learning game, 100%. It's all that, but we're talking about a quarterback that's a senior that's been in the same system for 3 years now. All 3 years that he's been a starter. These wide receivers um, have they're still underclassmen, but they're not freshmen. You got a tight end who's in his 3rd year, if I'm remembering right, with Pat Henry, and those offensive linemen, they're all veterans, all of them. I just at this point they should, they shouldn't still be developing. Um, those wide receivers should be, but all those upperclassmen, they should be on the tail end of their development at this point. But on the defensive side, yeah, I mean, I buy into that. They're still learning a new scheme and getting it in place, and there's still some things to clean up. But man, it's been much improved over what it was last year. You have to line up and flat out put your man on his backside to be a good O line. Yes, it also depends on the offense and this. The zone blocking is it's not like putting a hat on a hat and just killing the guy in front of you, man. There's a lot more finesse involved in it. Um, it's just there's different styles. Wade is the leader. I'm talking about on the offensive side of the ball. I don't see. I don't know who the leader is over there. There's. I just don't know that there is that guy with that personality. Really surprised after last year they haven't tried to get a running back 2 ready. Well, Haynes should be back sometime here soon. Um, and we're still only 2 games in, and one of those, the offensive coordinator just totally abandoned the run. But they've gotten Davidson a handful of carries. Easy's had a handful. I wasn't expecting those 2 guys to go out and get 15 carries in either of these games unless it was going to be a blowout, and I would have expected Gideon to get those carries. And so that'll be a process. Are we being forced to like Randall? I'm not being forced to like him. I liked what I saw from him in the second half. But if he don't have anywhere to run, there's not a lot he can do. He's, there are not a ton of backs that can routinely make something out of nothing, play after play after play after play. Um, you know, the guys in front of you got to do their job. And I thought he showed on Saturday that when they do that, he can get the job done. So nobody's forcing me to like him. Um, you know, you say seem like nobody else is getting a chance. Well, you got to have success. I think they've run like 110 plays through 2 games, and both of them have been, dogfights. They gave Gideon a couple carries the other night. They put him in a bad spot, which I think that was Cade that checked into that play where Gideon had to block Perkins against LSU. I don't think it was originally called that way, but again, it's a process, man. It's not going to happen overnight. Garrett Riley's experience. I guess you mean Garrett Riley experiment is over. He's not creative enough. Wide receivers dropping balls and not getting. I've seen plenty of receivers open. Plenty, especially Saturday. I think some people are kind of losing sight of the fact of exactly how good that LSU secondary, how much talent they've got on the back end there. That was always going to be, a dogfight. And there was plenty of guys open Saturday. Glad Dabo is finally saying publicly they suck too. Yeah, he didn't really say that, but I see what you're saying. He was kind of being sarcastic there, but Dabo's been, he came. He kind of came. He's been critical of Garrett Riley. He was very critical of Cade. And I kind of think you might start seeing more of that out of him as we get into this era where these guys are making all this money. When you're getting paid as much as some of these guys are making, man, you kind of open to that. I'm not saying you're going to see it all the time or he's going to start calling everybody out. So I don't think he will. You might start seeing a little bit more of it with the older guys, anyways, guys that's been around and he expects more of. But it was kind of refreshing to hear him say the other night after that LSU game, and again on Tuesday, about how they, we can't abandon the run that way. I expected the defensive line to get more pressure on the QBs. We have to be able to pressure anyone. The offense just seems to be struggling to get any positive momentum. Huge disappointment so far. I haven't been disappointed with the defensive line at all. Has it been perfect? No, but I think they've been pretty dang disruptive, especially when the top guys are in. It's hard to put pressure on a quarterback when Nussmeier's completing 15 passes behind the line of scrimmage and he's getting it out in less than 2.5 seconds. When an offense is getting it out that quick, you're not really going to get much pressure. And Troy was getting it out pretty quick for the most part the other night too. But again, I think they was doing. I got the impression they were doing some experimenting the other night too. Definitely isn't running back by committee like we were. I never heard anybody promise a running back by committee, so I don't know where that came from. I don't remember Dabo ever saying that. He was about as clear as he could be without saying Randall's the guy. I mean, that he's been saying it all camp. Do I think the offense is too vanilla? No. Again, there's a lot of offenses that don't use a lot of motion and those, window dressing or whatever you want to call it, misdirection and stuff. I don't know. I don't know that I'd say it's too vanilla. When your offensive line is just not playing, or when they're playing, as badly as this offensive line has played for a lot of the first 8 quarters, you're not going to be able to do much, especially when your quarterback's playing spooked. He's. I don't know that that the offense is too vanilla. I think you got a coordinator that gets a little pass happy sometimes, but that's not about the offense being vanilla. That's about how he's seeing things and how he's calling it. So no, I don't think it's too vanilla. I think you got. I think probably some of the biggest issues are the protection, the run blocking, and your quarterback kind of not living up to what was expected of him as a senior. I'm not getting into any coaches being fired, so I can go ahead and tell you that now. Not my job. It's not the OC, it's the QB. When the offensive coordinator calls 19 straight pass plays in a one-score game, yeah, he that's part of the problem. Absolutely. But no, it's not all on him. Again, the way this offensive line's played for a lot of the first 2 games, that'll make any offense look bad. I don't care who's calling the plays. I tend to lean towards thinking the way they played against LSU, and with a lot of the pressure that Cade was feeling in that game, that he got a little spooked. Played like he was spooked, and that kind of continued through the first half Saturday. So yeah, I mean that all that stuff factors in. But I don't think that Garrett Riley is. I mean, I think there's some blame to go there too, especially for the first game, and the first half against Troy. It's his offense. If you see that the what you're doing up front isn't working, switch it up, which they ended up doing at halftime. I'd love to know where that change kind of originated, but I mean, I do think he shares at least a part of the blame. TJ needs to play better. Lucas needs to play better. Yeah. I haven't heard a lot from TJ Parker over the first 2 games. kind of Will Helt's kind of outshone him there so far over the first two. But as far as Jaden Lucas goes, I don't think he's been terrible back there, man. Trying to remember. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I mean, he graded much higher than Terrell did this week, and I want to say he graded higher. I'd have to go back and look, but if I'm remembering right, he might have graded the highest of all three against LSU. He's not the best tackler in open field, but I don't think he's played terribly so far. What's up with TJ Parker? And I don't think anything's wrong with Peter Woods. I think his impact has 100% shown up. Go back and watch the film. He has been absolutely disruptive. It's just these two teams so far have just been getting the ball out so quick a lot of time, particularly LSU, man. I mean, they screened him to death. But he's been pretty disruptive. I guess I'm in the minority. The LSU game was a deflating loss. Historically, teams come out flat the next week. Second half was how we expected the full game to be. Maybe I'm overly optimistic, but I think they will get it going. I talked about that earlier too. I absolutely 100% believe that there was that a hangover. Make no mistake. We saw with LSU too. They kind of played like ass Saturday too. I just don't think that was all of it. I just don't think the offensive line played very well. Again, and I think that leads to the quarterback being spooked and getting the ball out late, not going through his progressions. You don't go through your progressions. You don't see who's open and who's not, particularly if you don't even go to your hot read. It was much better in the second half, absolutely. But to me, it still fell a little off. Riley needs to help out and give him some quick throws and backside of the backfield and use the tight end more. The lack of the tight end usage has been one of the bigger surprises to me. I think the tight ends have one catch against Troy. They've been we've seen some two tight end sets. They just haven't been used much in the passing game. Heck, I think Olsen Pat Henry might have the best catch of the season so far. That catch he made against LSU, but I wouldn't mind seeing them getting a little bit more involved. But that was one of the things I wrote that. I can't remember. It might have been in my prediction story Friday, but I wrote that what they needed to do was, get Cade some easy stuff early to kind of get him going, and it didn't happen. But when your offensive line's not opening holes for the backs, it puts more pressure on you out of the gate, and that's what happened Saturday. Is any Cade's the quarterback, man? There's no quarterback controversy. And there's no other option right now besides Lazina. Do I think Adam Randall is going to hold up running hard? I don't think he's soft. No. Absolutely not. Does he get hurt? He could. He's a running back. That don't mean he's soft. Now, whether he holds up or not, I think he's dealt with some injuries already. He's had he had the torn ACL. He had something cleaned up in his other knee, if I'm remembering right. He broke a hand. So yeah, he's been banged up at times, but I certainly don't think that makes somebody soft. Chris Denson is the freshman quarterback, the left-hander, and he's not ready. He is very raw. I am concerned with the defense. I'm not. It seems not much has changed since West was at Clemson. I think a lot has changed. Teams aren't running for 200 yards on you. That's a big difference. Big difference. And it's hard, again, man, I've talked about this already. It's hard to get pressure when a team like LSU is screening you to death. You're not going to sack the quarterback or even get in his face when he's throwing 15, 16, 17 passes behind the line of scrimmage. Again, as I've said, I do think there's still some things to clean up, and I think they were tinkering with some things Saturday. But I think this defense is going to get better as we go throughout the season. I don't see how you can say they still have major issues with the run. The numbers, the name of the game is, keeping them out of the end zone, and heck, they've done a pretty good job of that. And I think they're allowing like 2-point-something yards per carry as a defense. I'd have to go back and look, but I mean, the rush defense is much better than what it was over the last 4 or 5 games last year. Feels like the coaches see one thing in practice and then something else on Saturdays. Is it a failure to translate, or coaches that are blind to what's happening in practice? Look, man, I think there are very good coaches on this staff. I know a lot of people, the first reaction is the coaches suck. The coaches suck. I don't think that. For whatever reason, what they're seeing on the practice field is not translating. I can't tell you why. You're not going to know what you have until you get out there, because you can't really, you know, recreate a real game environment with no preseason games or anything. You just get to scrimmage a couple of times and hold practices during camp. You get the spring game in the spring, but that's a little different because you're not really preparing for the season at that point. But I mean, yeah, I would agree that something's not translating. Absolutely, but I don't think they're blind to what's happening at all. I mean, I think there's some really good coaches on this staff. First drive against Troy coming out of the half, 10 plays, 8 runs, 2 passes, says a lot. No confidence. See, I don't know that that's what it was. I just think that I honestly believe that Dabo wants to run the ball. And he believes or believed they should have been able to run it against those guys. So I don't think it's just because they didn't have confidence in the pass pro. Having said that, it was not holding up, but Dabo's going to want to run the ball. That's why they changed the way they were blocking up front at halftime. Didn't think Sadler or Sewell were ever starters. No, I can't remember how many games Sadler started. He did miss most of last year. But Sewell had like 8 or 9 starts coming into the season, played more than 1,000 snaps. That makes him a veteran in my eyes. Elite running back recruits wouldn't want to come to Clemson with their offensive play. No running back wants to come play in an offense that's not going to run the ball, man. That's absolutely correct. And against LSU, Trey Segura, their lone running back offer in the 27 class was on hand. Andrew Beard was on hand. Another 4-star back in the 27 class. He doesn't have an offer yet, but he's certainly a candidate for when they decide to expand the board. I mean, that's not the recipe. If you're trying to attract elite level backs, abandoning the run in front of them is not the way to do it. Cade not seeing so many open receivers. I would agree with that. Definitely on him. He's like a pitcher in a funk, thinking, not throwing. Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier. While I don't think I don't think he's like this is a result of his ego getting too big due to reading all the press clippings in the offseason. I don't think this is that. This, to me, this looks more like a guy trying to live up to those expectations, and so maybe afraid to make a mistake. I definitely think he's overthinking. Absolutely. He's always been better when he plays fast and just kind of reacts instead of overthinking things. It's definitely hampered him some over these first 2 games for sure. You know, he needs to get back to kind of what he was down the stretch last season. Might be overthinking, but it seems like the players on offense don't even seem to care. Yeah, you might be overthinking that one. I just don't. Different people react differently to different things. You know, I've been around Klubnik enough to know that dude hates losing, man. Hates it. You know, he didn't lose in high school. He's not used to losing. He hates it. They absolutely have some very laid back dudes on that offense, and maybe that plays a part into a lack of leadership. But I don't think it's that they don't care. All those guys want to win. When can Chris Denson get an opportunity? He's not ready, man. I get it. The backup quarterbacks are always the most popular players on the team, man. But the only realistic option outside of Klubnik for this season is Vizina. Not a fan of Tom Allen not being on the field. Why? I mean, it's his choice. Why would you not want him to be where he wants to be? I mean, that's what I would want. I would want him to be where he wants to be. Georgia Tech may be the best team we have played so far. Not impressed with LSU. I was impressed with LSU the first game. I thought they suffered from a hangover too Saturday. You know, we'll see what happens to him from here. But I was really impressed with their defense, man. I thought they were flying around. They were really good up front. There was a time where the QB would be sat for a series at Clemson. It's been a long time ago. I don't remember that. Not for performance. I don't remember that happening very often. You're wondering why it hadn't happened yet. I'll just say this: there is no one on this planet that would ever convince me that Dabo does not go with the guys that he thinks gives him the best chance to win from one play to the next. You know, as far as sitting the guy for a series, there could be 10 different reasons why you wouldn't do that. You know, and one of them would be not having confidence in your backup. I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm just saying that is one possibility. You know, I mean, there could be several different reasons. I don't. That's not that big a deal to me. To me, I think you just need to let him play through it. How do you miss a 6'7" player with a hoop? You're gonna have to. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Deion Sanders played all 3 of his QBs Saturday. Ended up finding the third string red shirt sophomore was on fire. He sparked the team. I mean, so what? I get it, man. You're a big Trent Pyramid guy. You know, the staff does not believe he gives them a better shot of winning. I don't either. I know a lot of other people that don't. You know, he's great he's a great right now as the third guy. That's kind of how I see him. You know, there have been so many instances of guys that look so great in the spring game turning out to not be nearly as great as they looked in the spring game. You know, you get to see it one time. These coaches see them every day in practice, every day. Matter of fact, I remember one year Clemson had this big running back. I think his name was Ryan Fleming. Killed it, absolutely killed it during the spring game, man. Next season rolls around and he's not getting an opportunity early in the season, and the running game struggling, and fans are screaming for this guy. And Clemson was playing FCS team, I think, in week 2 or week 3. I can't remember who it was or what exact week it was, but it wasn't the opener. And they're finally going to give this kid an opportunity. He ain't even ready when his number's called. When he does get in there, he fumbles twice. I mean, the coaches see these kids every day in practice, every day. I predict Clemson beating Georgia Tech by 4 touchdowns. It's been a minute since Georgia Tech's beat Clemson. Clemson's won 9 in a row. Haven't lost that streak start. Clemson's won 9 in a row. That streak started in 2015. So it's been a little while. ever got the impression Trevor and Deshaun were loud in your face guys. I don't think that you got to be loud about it. Trevor was a leader. I think Deshaun was too. And I wasn't covering him when Deshaun was the quarterback, but there's different ways to lead. I just don't know that there's a real leader on the offense right now. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a loud in your face guy. To me, there might be too much laid backness on the offense. Did Elliott and Venables moving on from Clemson hurt the program more in recruiting or coaching? Look, man, there's only one Brent Venables. I know Clemson fans, and I know you ain't a Clemson fan, but I know all Clemson fans want the next Brent Venables, but there ain't another one. You're not getting another one. And more than half the fan base was ready to get rid of Tony Elliott by the time he left. And now I see so many people in the last few days wanting him back, man. It's a funny thing. How ironic is that? But I think Clemson's in fine hands on the defensive side of the ball now. We'll see on the offense. I'm not convinced. I thought it was a home run hire when it was made, but I'm not real convinced on Riley just yet. As far as where it's hurt them the most, I can't answer that. I think the biggest thing that's hurt Clemson in recruiting is the NIL stuff. I think that's hurt more so than any coach. Do I see the Tigers ready to play against Georgia Tech? I don't know what to expect from this team, man. I really don't. What I've seen over the first 2 weeks does not give me a lot of confidence in them being able to go over there and win. I tell you that. Would I be shocked if they went over there and came out with their hair on fire and beat them by 20? No. Certainly wouldn't predict it, but I wouldn't be shocked. I just don't know what to expect, man. This is a team that doesn't have an identity on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think they really know what they are yet. And that's not a good spot to be in as you're heading off to play one of the most important games of the season. Has Williams' absence caused Cade to be? No, I don't think. Clemson's supposed to be able to go 5-6 deep at wide receiver, man. We heard about the waves of terror all through the preseason. Cade talked about it too. No, I don't buy into that for 1 second. I do believe that Antonio was going to be a big part of the game plan against LSU, even before he got hurt on that second possession there, man. They had already lined him up in the backfield. I mean, I think they were kind of going to try to use him a lot of different ways. But no, I don't think that's what's Cade's problem is. Here's a very good point. Watson and Lawrence led. They a lot of their leadership came by what they did on the field. Klubnik does not have that to fall back on at this point. No, Allen has not always coached in the box. He did both at Penn State last year, actually. I see that running back room clearing out next year. Yeah, we all said that this year too. I thought it would have some guys bold after last year. Dude, I don't dislike you, man. I don't dislike you at all. I think you're lean heavily, heavily, heavily toward the. I think sometimes you let your emotions dictate your opinions more than logic, but I don't dislike you at all. Hell, I used to be you, man. I used to be just like you. Man, I'm telling you, man, dude, it's so much better when you don't care whether they win or lose. Life's so much better. I also think that Cade is too wired before and during. See, I haven't seen that this year. I do believe he was too amped up in the past. I have not seen that this year. If he's too wired, he's absolutely not showing it. Not that I've seen. Yeah, I've been wondering who the 6'7" guy is too. The only one I know of is Shefflin, and he's not played. Yeah, I don't know the status on Antonio or Khalil. Both of them were moving. They neither one of them were walking with a limp or anything Saturday. Khalil actually had his pregame stuff on. He was wearing tennis shoes. He never took part in pregame. Antonio didn't dress at all for anything, but they didn't have like their hamstrings aren't wrapped or any kind of mechanism on them or anything. I mean, excuse me, they look like they're getting close. Watching way too many games these last 2 weeks. I saw the majority of the quarterbacks making things look so easy. See, a lot of the games that I watched, I've seen a lot of mediocre quarterback play. Um, you know, Arch Manning's a prime example of what he did against Ohio State. Lenore Sellers has looked downright average in his first two games a lot of the time. I don't think that the Penn State quarterback had some issues Saturday. We must be been watching different games. But no, I don't think you're going to see the backup unless unless it gets to a desperation stance point. How was Troy able to have so much success passing against our? I didn't think they had that much. They hit the one big play there that with that one drive to start the game. They hit the 44-yard touchdown, which was a big chunk of their passing yardage. I think they had like 200. That was like 25% of. They worked the mismatch there, and Clemson's coaches should have saw it and called a timeout, and they missed it. They had their speedy slot receiver that can fly matched up on a linebacker out wide. That is a mismatch if there ever was one. So that was where a big chunk of them passing yards came. But Again, I've said it 10 times already. I've not had big issues with the defense, man. Has it been perfect? No. There's still some things they need to clean up 100%, but it's a night and day difference than what we saw, over the back half of last season. And I say that wholeheartedly believing they've been experimenting. I think they did a lot of tinkering in the Troy game. We saw a lot of different looks. We saw some nickel. We saw some dime. We saw 5-man defensive front. We saw 4-3. We saw some 3-4. We saw a little bit of it all. So, I think Allen's still kind of trying to figure out who works best in what spot, and getting, acquainted with what his personnel can actually do in game situations. Another thing I've said a lot of, I think it's going to be a process. I think the defense will be much better by the end of the season than it is at the beginning of the season. But there ain't been nothing wrong with this defense for the most part the first two games. You hold that LSU offense 17 points, that's a win in my book. You've allowed 3 touchdowns all season. One of them on a play where your coach should have called a timeout, and he even admits he should have called a timeout. Where kudos to Troy. They got a mismatch and took advantage of it. I can't answer that about Vizina. We've not seen enough of him to know. I think if he gave you the better opportunity to win, he'd be the guy playing. I think the same thing about Jeremiah Alexander. If he gave you a better opportunity at winning, I think he'd be playing. But he's not, Woodaz is the will. Sammy's the Mike. Alexander's been doing most of his work at Mike. So he's the backup to Sammy, not Woodaz. Whatever happened to the dirt raid, I think it got left in that introductory press conference. Am I getting a sense of any frustrations with the offense? All you had to do is listen to Dabo talk Saturday night after the LSU game, Tuesday after the LSU game. It was pretty apparent he was frustrated. Am I surprised we haven't seen more of Jeremiah? Yeah, a little bit. Did I think he was going to play 15, 20 snaps a game? Probably not. But yeah, I thought he'd be the first guy in, at least at one of the spots. But it's kind of been Kobe, and Dabo kind of explained that the other day. But I think Kobe was like, if you're a believer in the PFF grades, Kobe graded terribly Saturday. Jeremiah was at least about average. Matter of fact, I got them right here. Kobe graded out at 32.7. Anything below 50 is poor. Jeremiah, he was less than average, 53.6. He graded about the same as Jamal Anderson, 52.0. Yeah, King, this is gonna be a challenge, man. Now you got to prepare for 2 quarterbacks, because their freshmen played last week and they slung it all around the field. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw 2 because the backup's a much better thrower than Haynes is. Haynes a run first guy. That's definitely going to be a challenge. And I can guarantee you Georgia Tech's had this game circled. Who has Jeff Scott's number? Everybody's always worried about Dabo hiring these inexperienced coaches. Jeff Scott's never ran offense, never called plays. He was really co-offensive coordinator in name only. Heck of a wide receivers coach, but I don't know what he would do running an offense. Everybody, I don't know him. He was gone by the time I started doing this, but I've always been told he's a very bright offensive mind. But he didn't run his offense at South Florida. He didn't run the offense at Clemson. Didn't call the plays or anything. I don't know what you'd get there, and I've been told he's got no interest in coming back to coaching right now, anyways. CV is a longer body to reach in short yards. Didn't matter the other night when they put him in on 4th and short, did it? If I think it was Sewell, if Sewell just makes the block, man, he's probably running for a ways. Adam Randall is the only running back physically capable of running behind the offense line. Yeah, I don't agree with that. Everyone else is too small. Gideon Davis is not too small. And I don't think Zui Umame is either. That's not the reason why they didn't have Jay Haynes in for so long last year. Not from what I've been told anyways. Had nothing to do with his size. Although I don't, Haynes is a little bit smaller. I don't see him as a every down back week in and week out. But I definitely would not say that about Gideon Davidson. I don't think that about Easy either. The 5-star, 4-star. Gideon was a 4-star, but yeah, he's a big dude too. I mean, he's not quite Adam Randall big, but yeah, he's a big dude, man, and he is physically he could carry the load right now. I just don't know that he's there mentally. Dude's got thighs like tree trunks. Thought CK was going to. I thought he'd be a little bit more involved in the running game, at least in some games. I was expecting him to be a little bit more involved again in the LSU game too. Probably not so much against Troy, but I definitely thought they'd try to make his legs more of a factor against LSU. I know what those number one, those weights aren't updated. I can tell you that right now. very few running backs weigh 230 pounds, particularly at the college level. Um, Randall's kind of an exception to that rule. Most of them are in the 210 to 220 range. I'm betting Gideon's probably somewhere between 205 and 210 right now. Easy, probably 215 to 220. Those weights have not been updated with the current weights from the recent weigh-in. They didn't disclose any of those weights, and I was told by one of the officials up there that it would be quite some time before they had updated them. But we can agree to disagree. That's the beauty of things. I'm just of the opinion you don't have to be a 35-pound running back. If you're talking about because of the poor run blocking, it ain't Adam Randall's not making anything out of nothing when they're not run blocking either. So, I mean, it's kind of moot in my opinion. All right, let's see if there's anything we have not talked about. Missing Brenny Stool. I don't. Y'all know how I don't think they're missing Brenny Stool all that much. I do think he misses Antonio, but I don't think that's that big a deal when it comes to some of these issues. Did Randall tore his ACL, and then after that he I don't know what it was, but I if I remember right, he had to have something minor done on his other knee. I do think it definitely impacted his speed because he doesn't look as fast as he did to me in high school. Yeah, LSU had less than 150 yards rushing, and I think they got like 20 something on one play early in the game. I think they averaged like less than 2.5 yards per carry in the second half. So they adjusted to it. And yeah, I don't have any updates on Khalil Barnes or Antonio Williams. Cade threw that's right. They've only given up 3 of the touchdowns. And heck, that pick 6, I put that on Blake Miller, man. He's got to get his hands in the chest of that lineman, man, and not let him get his arms up. See, this is something else I disagree with, man. Look at the coaches, Grish, Spiller, Richard. We are soft, Batson soft. So if it's Batson's fault, how come they weren't soft, all those years during those playoff teams? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't see how you can be soft and make it to the NFL. Grisham, CJ, and I'm a big believer in Kyle Richardson, man. I think the tight ends have done pretty well under him. I think he's probably one of the brightest offensive minds on that staff. I would not be shocked at all, if when it comes time for a new offensive coordinator, if he ain't the guy. Um, you know, but that's just me. Nah, I've not heard anything about TJ Moore being dinged up. It's kind of that pass the other night that he was a little hesitant on. That thing came out. It should have been thrown way sooner. Um, Cade hung him out to dry. I mean, it's easy to sit here and say he should have caught that ball with that defender. Just, I mean, we're all human. Nobody wants to get lit up like that. Your quarterback's got to get that ball out quicker, and then he can make a move to try and make that defender miss. Um, I do believe I've seen a little frustration with TJ Moore here, with the way some things have gone. Yeah, I'm coming. No, my wife's asking me if I'm done. She's telling me my dinner is ready, and just rolled her eyes. See, that's kind of how I see it. I'm good with Tom Allen being wherever he wants to be. If he wants to be in the box, so be it. Um, let that man be where he wants to be, and if anybody needs to do the yelling, Boulware can handle it. Chris Rumpf can do some yelling too, man. He doesn't really get talked about a lot in that regard, man. But watching him coach is fun. We can ask anything we want, man. Nobody's scared to ask anything, but nobody's going to ask something that's insulting. Nobody's going to ask something that's been asked 10 times and we already know the answer to. I get it. There's a lot of fans. I'm not necessarily talking about you, but there's a lot of fans out there that you should ask this, you should ask that, thinking we should go up there and just start insulting these guys, man. And nobody's going to do that. I mean, and one of the things you don't do is ask about firing a coach or those kind of things. And there's been plenty of questions asked of Dabo regarding how the offense is played against LSU, how it played in the first half against Troy. He didn't really answer many of them about Troy, except to say things were weird. I think weird was the word he used, but no, we can't go. We can ask anything we want, but we can't go in there and be disrespectful. Number one, Tristan Smith's not 6'7". That the ball was a little bit low, sure, but he can't really put his knee on the ground there either. No, I know Jeff Scott's not available. I don't have to say hypothetically or think I know. You're talking about Hunter Helms, but good point there. All right, my dinner is ready, so there's going to be some here at the end that I'm not going to make it to. I apologize. She's Corona said she wasn't talking about Artur says. I'm just, you said you watched a bunch of quarterbacks. I said, I'm just making the counterpoint that I watched a bunch too that didn't quite, look all that great. I just happened to mention those were two that came to mind off the top of my head. looking for Cade that manages the offense. Yeah. The thing, I just want to see Cade not a Cade that's not flustered, not overthinking, and a Cade that's getting some protection in front of him. And maybe things will start to smooth out. South Carolina fans complaining about Shula sounds familiar because Sellers doesn't look like a world beater. I tried to tell y'all before the season started, I had questions about those receivers, man. There's a lot of youth at receiver, South Carolina. Basically, they're veteran guys. Harbor, if I'm remembering right. And he just started devoting all his time to football. There's a lot of youth at receiver, man. I think Mazio Bennett's still an underclassman, and then you got, all those freshmen that should still be. They got two that should still be seniors in high school right now that reclassified from 26 to 25, and Jordan Gidron and Donovan Murph, Jaden Sellers, Lenoris' little brother, is a true freshman. So they got a lot of youth at receiver. Yeah, I don't put a whole lot of stock into PFF grades, man. I'm with you there. Yeah, I really like what I saw out of Randall once he had some room to operate. All right, before we jump out of here, man, I want to thank our sponsor over at A-Glass, 2 locations right here in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter. All your auto glass needs, replacement, and repair. Anything you need. You can get yourself a free quote today at myaglass.com. Ran way over tonight. I knew I would. Good Lord, it's already 8:45. Appreciate everybody that tuned in. Right back here next Monday, 7 p.m.